On March 7, 2025, a few minutes after I had already flipped the sign to closed, a clean white Highlander pulled into my lot, with the owner practically apologizing through the window for catching me late. Nothing was wrong with it. That was the point. He had just hit 142,000 miles. The truck ran beautifully, and he wanted to know one thing before a long road trip. Did he ever need to touch the transmission fluid? His dealer had told him for years it was sealed, filled for life, never needs service. Today I'm revealing why that single sentence, filled for life, is quietly killing more Toyota transmissions than hard driving ever will, and why 9 out of 10 owners will never replace a fluid that was absolutely designed to be replaced. I've been turning wrenches on Toyotas for over 2 decades, and I want you to understand something before we go any further. This is not one of those videos where I tell you your truck is a ticking time bomb. Toyota builds some of the most durable transmissions on the planet. The Aisin-built units behind their trucks and sport utility vehicles are genuinely excellent. That's exactly why this problem is so frustrating. We are taking transmissions that could easily run 300,000 miles and quietly cutting their lives in half because of 3 words printed in a maintenance schedule that almost nobody reads correctly. So let me tell you what actually happened with that Highlander, because it explains everything. When that owner said the dealer told him it was filled for life, he believed it meant the life of his vehicle. That is what every normal person assumes those words mean, but that is not what the engineers meant when they wrote it. In the language of the industry, lifetime fluid means the life of the transmission, and the fluid is one of the biggest factors deciding how long that life actually is. Read that again, because it's the whole trick. The fluid is sold as something that lasts as long as the transmission, while quietly being one of the main things that determines when the transmission dies. It's circular logic, and it's been costing Toyota owners thousands of dollars for 15 years. Here is the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. Somewhere around the early part of the decade, beginning in 2010, the entire industry started moving towards sealed transmissions. No dipstick, no tube, no easy way for an owner to even look at their fluid, let alone check it. The official reason was emissions, precision, and reduced maintenance. And some of that is real. Toyota's WS fluid, world standard, is a low-viscosity synthetic blend that is genuinely better than the old red ATF your father used to top off in the driveway. But the quiet consequence of sealing everything up was this: an entire generation of owners stopped thinking about transmission fluid entirely. Out of sight, out of mind, out of warranty. And that is where the incentives get ugly. Think carefully about who benefits from lifetime fluid. It is not you. A transmission fluid change is a cheap, profitable 15-minute to an hour service, but a transmission that quietly cooks itself to death at 160,000 miles? That is a $4,000 to $6,000 rebuild or a brand new vehicle sale when the owner decides the truck just got old. When the official guidance is to do nothing, neglect becomes the default. And neglect is enormously profitable for everyone except the person who owns the truck. I am not saying anyone is twirling a mustache in a back office. I am saying the incentives are bent, and bent incentives don't need villains to do damage. They just need everyone to follow the path of least resistance. Now let me show you what's actually happening inside that sealed case, while you drive around believing everything is fine. Automatic transmission fluid is not just lubricant. In your Toyota, it is doing 4 jobs at once. It is hydraulic fluid, pressurizing tiny passages to apply clutches and shift gears. It is a coolant, carrying heat away from the friction surfaces. It is a friction modifier, engineered so your clutch packs grab and release with exactly the right feel. And it is a cleaning agent, holding microscopic debris in suspension so it does not grind into the moving parts. One fluid, handling all those roles at the same time, in one of the hottest and most violent environments in your entire vehicle. And here is what nobody tells you. The single thing that destroys that fluid is heat. Not miles, not age, not even hard launches. Automatic transmission fluid lives happily at around 175 degrees Fahrenheit. But every time you tow a boat up a grade, crawl through summer stop-and-go traffic, or climb a long mountain pass, the temperature inside that transmission climbs. And there is a rule of thumb that has been understood by lubrication chemists for decades. For roughly every 20 degrees of sustained temperature above the ideal range, the effective life of the fluid is cut in half. At 175 degrees, your fluid might last 100,000 miles. Push it to sustained operation 40 degrees hotter, and that same fluid is chemically worn out in a fraction of the distance. The transmission does not tell you. There is no dipstick to check, no light on the dash. The fluid just quietly oxidizes, breaks down, and stops doing its four jobs as well as it used to. Picture frying oil. The first time you heat it, it is clear and clean. Use it once, it is still fine. But cook with it over and over, get it hot, let it cool, get it hot again, and eventually it turns dark, thick, and burnt. It still looks like oil. It still pours like oil. But it has fundamentally changed. Your transmission fluid does the exact same thing, except you never get to see the color, because Toyota sealed the fryer shut and told you it never needs changing. As that fluid degrades, the consequences stack up so slowly that you adapt to them without noticing. The friction modifiers break down first, so your shifts get a little firmer, a little less crisp. But it happens over months, so you just decide that is how the truck shifts now. The fluid's ability to carry away heat drops, so the transmission runs hotter, which degrades the fluid even faster, a quiet downward spiral feeding itself. The detergent properties fade, so clutch material and metal particles that used to stay suspended start settling into the valve body, clogging the microscopic passages that control your shifts. And the valve body is the brain of the whole operation. When fine debris gets into those passages, you get harsh shifts, delayed engagement, that little shudder at certain speeds. Most drivers blame the transmission. The transmission is fine, the fluid quit. By the time you actually feel a real problem, a slip, a flare, a clunk into gear, the damage is no longer in the fluid, it is in the hardware. And that is the cruel part of the lifetime fluid myth. The fluid is the cheapest, easiest thing to protect. But because you were told to ignore it, you only find out it mattered after it has already taken the expensive parts down with it. So let's talk about what you actually do, because this is where I have to be honest with you about both sides. First, the good news. Toyota WS-equipped transmissions are not fragile. A simple drain and fill is one of the best value services you can perform on your truck. You're not even getting all the fluid out. A single drain typically replaces somewhere around 30 to 40% of what is in there, because a lot of fluid lives up in the torque converter and the cooler lines. But that's fine. That's actually the gentle, smart way to do it. You drain what you can, refill with fresh, genuine Toyota WS, and you've just diluted the tired fluid with fresh additives and fresh cooling capacity. Do that every 30,000 to 60,000 miles, especially if you tow, haul, or live somewhere hot, and you have effectively defeated the entire problem for the cost of a few quarts of fluid. Now the part that requires real care, and where you've probably heard horror stories. You may have heard that changing the fluid on a high-mileage transmission will make it fail. I need to explain this clearly because it is half true and half dangerous nonsense. A transmission does not fail because you gave it clean fluid. It fails because it was already worn out. The old, gummy, broken-down fluid was the only thing temporarily holding its act together. The friction modifiers in degraded fluid can actually compensate for worn clutches. So if a truck has 200,000 neglected miles and you blast a high-pressure flush machine through it, you can dislodge debris and change the friction characteristics suddenly. A transmission that was barely hanging on can give up. The flush did not kill a healthy transmission. It removed the crutch from a dying one. That's why the move on any older, never-serviced Toyota is not a flush. It is a gentle drain and fill. And if you are nervous, a series of them spaced out over a few thousand miles. You replace a portion, drive it, then replace another portion and drive it. You ease the transmission back toward healthy fluid instead of shocking it. Patience, not pressure. If your truck has reasonable mileage and any kind of service history, you do not need to worry about any of this. Just start doing regular drain and fills, and you will be ahead of 90% of owners. One more thing, because it matters, and almost nobody does it right. These sealed transmissions don't have a dipstick. They have a fill-and-check procedure that depends on fluid temperature. The fluid expands as it heats, so checking the level cold versus hot gives you completely different readings. The correct procedure involves bringing the transmission up to a specific temperature window, usually monitored through the diagnostic port or a temperature sensor, and checking the level at the overflow plug within that window. Overfill it, and it foams and aerates. Underfill it, and it runs hot and starves the clutches. This is why I tell people that the fluid itself is cheap and forgiving, but the procedure deserves respect. If you're doing it yourself, do your homework on your specific model and transmission. If you're paying someone, make sure they actually follow the temperature procedure and aren't just dumping in a fixed number of quarts and calling it done. Here is what I want you to take from that Highlander in my lot. His truck was perfect. The fluid had never been touched in 142,000 miles, and he had been told for a decade that was correct. We did a simple drain and fill before his trip. The fluid that came out was dark, not catastrophic, but clearly tired, clearly nothing like the bright fluid going back in. He drove away with a transmission that shifted a touch cleaner, and more importantly, a transmission that now has a real shot at outliving the rest of the truck. Total cost, less than a single tank of gas for that boat he likes to tow. That is the whole secret. There is no special trick here. There is no miracle additive, no insider hack. There is just a fluid that was always meant to be changed, hidden behind 3 words designed to make you forget it exists. Filled for life was never a promise about your truck. It was a sentence about the fluid's relationship with the transmission, and the quiet truth is that the relationship is exactly as long as you let the fluid stay healthy. Modern Toyotas do not usually die from being driven hard. They die from being trusted too completely, from owners who did everything they were told, never missed an oil change, and never once questioned the one service that was quietly written out of the schedule. You do not have to be that owner. The most reliable trucks on the road are not the ones that got lucky. They are the ones owned by people who understood that lifetime was a marketing word, not a maintenance plan. So before you believe your transmission never needs anything, before you let 150,000 miles go by on factory fluid because someone told you it was sealed, change it gently, on schedule, and let that excellent Toyota transmission do what it was actually built to do, which is to last far longer than anyone selling you a new one would prefer. If this changed the way you think about that sealed transmission, hit like so more Toyota owners see it before they find out the hard way. Subscribe if you want weekly breakdowns that keep you in control of your truck, instead of guessing. And if you've got a high-mileage Toyota that's still shifting perfectly on fluid you've actually maintained, drop your mileage in the comments, because those numbers are the proof that lifetime fluid was always a choice, and now you know which choice keeps your transmission alive.